Order, order. Imran Hussain to move the motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and it's of course a pleasure to speak under your chairmanship. As a British parliamentarian, I remain proud of my roots in Pakistan and Kashmir, and therefore I continue to be privileged to be the chair of the all-party parliamentary group on Kashmir, which has support from across the political spectrum, has worked across Parliament, engaged with government ministers around one simple principle, and that is the inalienable human right of Kashmiris must always come first, which is why this debate is extremely timely, as members across this House continue to be extremely concerned at the seriously escalating tensions in Azad, Jammu and Kashmir. But before I go on to this, let me put some points on the record very clearly. Madam Chair, for over a decade, I have called out the persecution, oppression and injustice faced by Kashmiris in Indian-occupied Kashmir. Their calls for justice have too often gone unanswered. Their fundamental human rights have been violated. Their right to self-determination has been repeatedly denied to them. For over a decade, I have called out and challenged the most repressive and draconian security legislation, the Indian Armed Forces Special Powers Act, the Public Safety Act, and the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, legislation which continues to be used to give the Indian Armed Forces sweeping powers of detention and immunity to persecute journalists, human rights defenders, political activists and ordinary civilians. And we all saw in August 2019, when the right-wing Modi government unilaterally and illegally revoked Articles 370 and 35A, stripping Jammu and Kashmir of its special constitutional status. That was followed by mass detentions and unprecedented communications blackouts, severe restrictions on civil liberties and the further erosion of democratic rights. I led the campaign in this place on every single forum to call out the illegal actions of the Modi regime. And I want to today reassure the sons and daughters of Kashmir who remain under oppression in Indian-occupied Kashmir, your voices will never be silenced and they will continue to be heard loudly and clearly in this place. Madam Chair, I want to make another point for the record before I move into the substantial part of this debate, and that's this. There is no comparison between the long-term systematic human rights abuses that have taken place in Indian-occupied Kashmir and the current situation in Azad, Jammu and Kashmir. The scale, duration and nature of the repression in Indian-occupied Kashmir remains in a different category altogether. But that does not mean we should remain silent when serious concerns arise. And that brings me to the deeply troubling and worrying situation we have witnessed in recent weeks in Azad, Jammu and Kashmir. Members from across this House have been contacted by deeply distressed constituents unable to reach loved ones because of the lockdown and communications blackout imposed on parts of Azad Kashmir, now well into its fourth week.
Will my honourable friend give way?
Of course I will.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. I have been inundated with representations from my constituents who have friends, family and loved ones in Azad, Jammu and Kashmir, deeply concerned at this blackout that's been going on for a month. Would my honourable friend agree with me that the only way forward on this is peaceful resolution and for the government of Pakistan to return to peaceful table talks, and our government can play an important role in making those representations to the Pakistani government?
I thank my honourable friend, and he is absolutely right, and I'll come on to that point shortly. For over 1 million British Kashmiris, over 50,000 of whom were demonstrating on these streets of London over the weekend. This is not a distant foreign policy issue. These are their parents, their brothers, their sisters, their family. They have been worried sick, staring at silent phones waiting for a call that does not come, hoping that people they love are safe. I will take the honourable gentleman and then honourable lady. I will ask honourable members to be extremely brief because I have a substantial contribution to make.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way, and I thank him for his work as chair of the APPG. I've also been contacted by residents. I've got residents in Stoke-on-Trent North who live on both sides of the line of control and are seriously worried, and we've had reports of food shortages, medical supplies, baby milk. So would my honourable friend agree with me that the UK government must do all it can to make sure we open up all humanitarian routes possible?
I'll take the honourable lady first, who may make a very similar point.
My honourable friend is correct. I met recently with many constituents in my office who were deeply concerned by the internet blackout, unable to find if their families are okay, and telling me some horrendous stories, including one story unverified that a 2-year-old child has been shot. Their major concern is the food shortages and the lack of medicines that can go in. And does my honourable friend agree with me that these blockades must stop immediately so that children can survive?
I thank both my honourable friends, and I absolutely agree with both of them. And they will know, as chair of the APPG on Kashmir, I coordinated a letter to the Foreign Secretary calling for urgent diplomatic engagement to address these very issues, tabled an early day motion, which now combined has the support of over 70 parliamentarians from across this House, and I'm grateful for all colleagues. We've met with ministers, convened emergency parliamentary meetings through the APPG, because this House cannot simply look away. We have all seen deeply concerning reports of continued bloodshed, of arbitrary arrests, restrictions on communications, a breakdown in dialogue with representatives of the grassroots groups, and more recently reports suggesting restrictions on the movement of food and medical supplies into parts of Azad, Jammu and Kashmir, point that's been made. Now, these reports are profoundly concerning. We've also seen reports that those seeking to act as peaceful arbitrators, including senior Pakistani politicians, have themselves been prevented from entering Azad Kashmir. This cannot help de-escalate the situation. Groups like the Joint Awami Action Committee have for many months sought to pursue peaceful negotiations around long-standing civic, governance and economic concerns. There was a commitment that these issues would be resolved through dialogue. And I make this point, Madam Chair, criminalising grassroots movements can never be a solution. As many will know, most of the reasonable demands were negotiated and met, and there remains a number of issues outstanding, most importantly the one of the 12 refugee seats. Now, of course, there will be strongly held views on all sides of that issue, but whatever view one takes, ordinary Kashmiris should not be made to pay the price for a failure to return to peaceful table talks. It is therefore deeply unfortunate that the situation has deteriorated to this point. So I say to the government of Pakistan, I say to the government of Azad Kashmir, and I say to the Joint Awami Action Committee, the answer must be dialogue. The answer must be restraint. The answer must be peaceful negotiations. And I also welcome the efforts made in recent days by political figures and others who have called for an immediate return to negotiations. Those seeking to lower the temperature deserve the full support of this House. I will.
He talks eloquently about the need to lower the temperature and de-escalate the situation, but one of my constituents who was visiting Kashmir and relatives recently saw with his very own eyes a relative who was shot by the Pakistani authorities and was too terrified to go to hospital because he feared reprisals. Doesn't he agree that the shooting of unarmed civilians and peaceful protesters is something that this country and neither any country should tolerate?
I absolutely agree with my honourable friend, and whilst all the reports, because of the communications blackout, have not emerged in full, these reports continue to concern and should do quite rightly this whole House. I also want to say that there are those who use inflammatory and divisive language. My message to them is they do not help anyone. And I say this, successive Pakistani High Commissioners and ministers have engaged constructively with the all-party parliamentary group in the past. So I say to the governments of Pakistan and Azad-Kashmir, what message are they giving to over 1 million British Kashmiris? What message with regards to human rights are they sending to the international community? I also want to thank the Minister who could not be with us today but is well represented, no doubt. The Minister has been in regular meetings with me and with the all-party parliamentary group. I know the Minister visited Pakistan and continues to monitor the situation and raise the matter directly. So, Madam Chair, again, today, we in this House make an appeal of our own government to send a direct appeal to the Prime Minister of Pakistan and the government of Azad Kashmir, and to ensure this situation ends immediately. The lockdown and communications blackout must end. Any restrictions affecting the movement of food and medical supplies must end. Those acting as peaceful mediators must be allowed immediate access. Meaningful table talks with grassroots groups must resume immediately. And at the heart of those negotiations must remain one principle above all others: respect for the human rights of Kashmiris. Our government must play its role for the 1 million British Kashmiris impacted by this situation. It must continue using every appropriate diplomatic channel to encourage restraint, de-escalation and dialogue. And ultimately, peace and dialogue, Madam Chair, must prevail. There is only one sustainable path forward: peaceful table talks. As Chair of the APPG on Kashmir, I will continue to work constructively with all those prepared to pursue that objective. I will continue to stand up for and be the voice for over 1 million British Kashmiris with family who continue to be directly affected by these events. We will continue to speak out whenever the human rights of Kashmiris are threatened, and I will continue to push for a peaceful resolution in which the voices, dignity and fundamental rights of the Kashmiri people are placed where they always should have been, at the very heart of any lasting settlement. I commend this motion to the House.
May I remind members that they need to stand if they intend to speak, as there are a lot more people in the chamber than there are on my list, and you needed to be here at the start of the debate in order to be able to make a speech. So stand if you wish to speak if you were here at the start of the debate. Thank you. The question is that this House has considered government support for human rights in Kashmir. Jim Shannon.
A real pleasure to serve under your chairship, and a big thank you to the Honourable Gentleman for Bradford East for setting this scene. And I commend him for his words of wisdom and his direction for finding a peaceful policy in the way forward. I've supported the Honourable Gentleman every time he's had this debate over the years, and I'm very happy to be here again to do the very same thing again. I declare an interest as Chair of the APPG for freedom of religious belief, and also the Chair of the Pakistan Religious Minority. So this is something that's very close to my heart, and the Honourable Gentleman has put forward the case incredibly well. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to speak in this matter, and I commend all those honourable members who have consistently brought the plight of the Kashmiri people before this House. I was speaking on this matter before. I make no apology for returning to it. The situation in Kashmir is not a distant abstraction or distraction. It's a lived reality for millions of human beings, people with families, with faith, with hopes for their children. And this United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland has both a historic connection to that region and a moral obligation to speak truth to power. I look forward to the Minister's answers to, and Honourable Lady is much liked and much respected by all of us in this House. We look very much forward to her contribution. Kashmir, divided, disputed and suffering, represents one of the most protracted human rights crises of our age. Whether we speak of India administered Kashmir or Pakistan administered Kashmir, the reality for ordinary men, women and children on the ground is one of fear, of repression and of silenced voices. Amnesty International has documented with harrowing clarity the realities of life in Kashmir: arbitrary detention, torture, restrictions on freedom of assembly, and the suffocation of civil society, and many killings and injuries. These are not abstractions. These are human beings deserving of dignity, of justice and freedom. So I think of the words, and I use this, and I always try to if I'm having a debate, I think of the words of Micah chapter 6 verses 8 in the Holy Bible. What does the Lord require of you but to do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly? And I believe that's my reason why I'm here, to obey that Holy Scripture and speak up for my brothers and sisters across the world, wherever their human rights are being suppressed and wherever they've been persecuted. That, as I say, Madam Chair, is the standard of this House, and we must hold ourselves to it when we speak of Kashmir. I've been in delegations to Pakistan in the past. I'm due to return again, if God spares me, because I feel so strongly about the human rights of the people of that part of the world. I've sat with community leaders, with religious minorities, with mothers and fathers who simply want safety and freedom for their children, freedom of religion or belief. That intricate, God-given right is denied across the Kashmir region. Muslim communities, Hindu communities, Sikh communities, Christian communities all have experienced the fragile nature of life when the state does not protect fundamental rights as it should. The situation in India administers Kashmir since the revocation of Article 370 in 2019 has illustrated, I believe, the dangers of unchecked executive power, communications blackouts, thousands detained, journalists criminalised. In Pakistan, administered Kashmir, the democratic accountability remains a transformative aspiration rather than a lived reality. Can we honestly say in this House that we're doing all in our power to stand against this? Well, today is an opportunity to say that, to transfer us all to show our united resolve to speak up for our brothers and sisters in Kashmir. Well, I conclude with this, Madam Chair, because I'm conscious of your time, and you told me earlier. We must utilise and use every diplomatic channel, bilateral, multilateral, through the United Nations, to press both India and Pakistan to uphold their international human rights obligations. And I look to the Minister this afternoon to ascertain how we can seek to play our part in ensuring that the people of Kashmir are not disenfranchised from justice by geopolitical convenience. The heartbeat of our foreign policy, of this government's foreign policy, must be not only simple human rights, but actually must mean simple humanity. And for that simple humanity that I speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harris, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairship. And I thank my honourable friend, the member for Bradford East, for securing this important debate. My constituency of Luton South and South Bedfordshire is a vibrant and diverse area, and we have residents with far-reaching global connections. And this includes a large first, second and third generation British Kashmiri diaspora for whom Luton is home, where they've built their lives, raised their children, but who also maintain very strong familial ties to the region and regularly travel back to Kashmir to see relatives and loved ones. One recent example of the strong ties between Luton and Kashmir is our community's remarkable fundraising effort over the past 2 years. In 2024, UK charity Kids Operating Room approached myself and my honourable friend, the member for Luton North, because of Luton's close connection to Kashmir, to seek support to help build a new paediatric operating theatre in Coatley. Led by local GP Dr Tahir Mahmood, our Luton community and other donors raised more than £300,000 to fund the establishment of a fully equipped children's operating theatre at District Headquarters Hospital in Coatley. The project delivered over 3,300 pieces of specialist equipment, bringing life-saving care closer to thousands of children. This powerful intervention from our Luton community to support a universal human right, access to healthcare, highlights just how connected our Luton community is with Kashmir, and also why many of my constituents are deeply concerned about the ongoing human rights abuses taking place in the region. As my honourable friend has set out so eloquently, periods of unrest in the region, followed by authoritarian crackdowns, have become increasingly common, and we're once again seeing serious human rights concerns unfolding. The latest unrest began after peaceful protests against the Pakistani government's proposed electoral changes, which many feared would weaken political representation. On 5th of June, a movement was banned, and subsequently there were mobile and internet blackouts. And this has resulted in many of my constituents being unable to contact family and loved ones, while British nationals remain stranded in the region without communication or a way to return home. Reports indicate that more than 100 activists and journalists have been arrested, with roadblocks and travel restrictions effectively sealing off the region. Clashes between protesters and police have also resulted in several deaths and many injuries. And whilst every government has a responsibility to maintain public safety, over recent years we've seen unlawful use of tear gas and lethal force used, and both protesters and police officers killed, which seems to demonstrate a pattern of disproportionate action, preventing freedom of expression, peaceful assembly or access to communication with the outside world. We're all very aware of the political tensions in Kashmir, and the UK is home to significant diaspora communities of Pakistanis, Indians, Kashmiris. Emerging issues related to Kashmir therefore have the potential to affect our community cohesion here if we're not handling them sensitively. So I will conclude, because I know the ministers are very alive to these issues, and would my honourable friend ensure that any dialogue and actions relating to events in Kashmir are handled seriously and sensitively with consideration of the concerns of the diaspora communities? And can she elaborate what discussions she is having with counterparts in Pakistan to ensure human rights are being upheld in Kashmir and communication lines fully restored? And could she provide an update on steps being taken to identify and support British nationals who are stuck in the region and assist them with returning home? And for my constituents, it's vital we continue to use our influence on the international stage to remain steadfast in our commitment to ensuring equal and inalienable rights for all around the world, including Kashmiri's rights to self-determination. And we call out any government or regime who are infringing upon these rights.
I intend to start the front bench speeches at 5:08. So can members please make sure that they keep their remarks as short as possible. Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you, Ms Harris, for calling me in this debate. I will be very brief because others wish to speak. I first of all want to put on record my thanks to the member for Bradford and the member for Leeds East for the huge work they've done consistently on the issue of Kashmir, and the way that the member for Bradford has chaired the group on Kashmir, which has made a huge difference and meant that the issue has been properly debated in Parliament. And I think the contribution just made by the member for Strangford actually brought together the whole issue, which is fundamentally the way Kashmir was treated at the time of Indian independence. It's an overhanging colonial responsibility for Britain, which has never been resolved. It was referred to the United Nations in 1948, and that's where it still is. And so at some point that issue will have to be returned to. At some issue it'll have to be a recognition that this is an international issue that requires an international solution to it. The immediate crisis is in a sense symptomatic of the partition of Kashmir with the line of control between Indian-administered Jammu Kashmir and Pakistan-administered Azad-Kashmir. And the situation in Azad-Kashmir at the moment is frankly terrible. I have constituents who have family there, or constituents, some of whom are there at the moment. And the information getting back to us is there are shortages of just about everything. There's an inability to move about. There are very high prices for food. There are irrational detentions of people for taking part in protest, and general suppression of any level of civil and political activity. That is what happens when the economy spirals out of control and people cannot eat or eat themselves or be able to feed their children properly. So something has to be done. At the very least, one would hope that the British government, and I look forward to the Minister's response, will be able to put whatever pressure it can on the administration in Azad Kashmir and be firmly in touch with the Pakistan government through the High Commission here to ensure there is a lifting of the sanctions, there is a return of universal access to the internet, and there is free movement around Azad Kashmir, and actually a preparedness to engage in this whole issue as a way of bringing about long-term peace and stability within the region. Too many people are suffering, too much tension is going on, and too much abuse of power is taking place at this very moment.
Hali.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And it's indeed a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. And I would like to thank the member for Bradford East for securing this important debate. And I speak here not only as a British Kashmiri, but someone who was born in Kashmir. And having left that part of the world when I was a few months old, it is not unusual for me to hear what's going on in the main across Kashmir. And let us not be under any doubt that the disruption and the dispute that's happening in Azad Jammu Kashmir currently has no equivalence or any comparison with what is happening on Indian-occupied Kashmir. The principal enemy to the Kashmiri people's basic rights and dignity remains the extremist BJP government in New Delhi. Last November, 10 United Nations appointed human rights experts condemned India's string of arbitrary arrests, torture and lynchings of Kashmiris over the past couple of years. They highlighted reports of house demolitions and other tactics of collective punishment being used against Kashmiri Muslims. Even the Indian Supreme Court, which has many times been complicit in the oppression of Kashmiri people, had ruled against such actions in 2024. However, Modi's thugs do not care about their own law, let alone international law and morality. Day after day, families find their sons missing and then dead in canals and ditches, unexplained disappearances, later ruled by the authorities as suspected suicides. Day after day, we receive new torture, the old and the young, children and young alike. No one is spared. It is all too obvious what is happening. The Indian state tries to hide away all of its crime by suspending over 8,000 social media accounts, including accounts of independent journalists, and imposing media blackouts, but still the truth comes out. For as long as the Kashmiri people are oppressed by the extremist BJP regime, we will continue to call them out. Yet, every time we do raise this, the government reads the usual script that this is a bilateral matter between Pakistan and India. Kashmir is never a bilateral issue between India and Pakistan. Never will be, never has been. It is a mess that was left by a British Labour government in 1948, and we have a Labour government that can actually put that wrong to right now. And now's the time to step up. What is happening in Azad Jammu Kashmir? 38-point plan demands that were put to the government, 36 have been met. There is a dispute over 2 points, one of them being the 12 appointed seats that purportedly represent the Kashmiri migrants. The only way to resolve that is through peaceful negotiations and talks. And that can only happen if we've got flexibility on both sides. Well, it's a three-side. It's the Pakistani government, Azad Jammu and Kashmir government, and the Awami Action Committee. Someone needs to coordinate and facilitate them talks, and the British government can play its part. What we take objection to is the direct shooting of innocent civilians, 18 of whom have at least lost their lives. Internet blackout needs to be restored so families can stay in connection. But most importantly, those people that voice their concerns in this country are often find themselves targeted by their families being harassed over in Azad Jammu and Kashmir. That has to stop. They're actually tortured, they're actually harassed, and then they are made to read out public statements. That is violations of all international law, and that cannot continue to happen, that cannot be allowed to happen. I'll defy that.
Some of my constituents have now been labelled as terrorists because they have spoken out and are now unable to travel to visit their families should even the blockade stop. Does he agree with me that this type of draconian abuse of the law must stop and my constituents should not be labelled as such for speaking out?
I absolutely agree with that intervention, that no one's views, no matter how harsh, how difficult they might sound, it should reflect as a means of